Zoom Lunch and Learn Parshat HaShavua class. Good to see everybody on. And if you are new to this class, watching us by live stream or the recording later on, it's good to have you with us. As I have said in the past, the materials that I get for this Lunch and Learn come from Rabbi Jonathan Slater and the Institute for Jewish Spirituality. I would encourage anybody who's watching this now or later to go onto their website and look at the wealth of materials that they offer to our Jewish community. What a gift the Institute for Jewish Spirituality is. And we're going to be looking at some texts that Rabbi Slater prepared on the book of Bamidbar today. Hopefully we'll get through a couple of them. I think I've given us 4 of them. We'll see how we do. We begin with our bracha of study together. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher shechanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu, asok b'divrei Torah. Okay, so now let me share my screen. Okay, can we see it?
Yeah.
Can.
Barry, is it big enough or should I make it bigger? Because now I know how to go and do that.
Why don't you
Make it
try?
bigger.
Well, you know, even if I try, I'm still going to do it the old-fashioned way. I'm going to Control A and then go to, because just, you know, I'm a creature of habit. Okay, so Bamidbar. What is Bamidbar about? Who can tell us what the Torah portion is about this week?
The census.
Good. So it starts out with a census, and it's always read. It's usually read before, always the week before Shavuot. So we have Shavuot this week, and it's about the people of Israel gathering together in preparation for their marching through the wilderness. Bamidbar begins the final moment where the Israelites are preparing for the eventual journey that will begin very soon. So we're going to begin with this notion of census. And do I volunteer who would like to read the first source for us, first in the Hebrew?
Laura, where are you?
Do I need to call on my regular readers? It's either Lily or Leora or George or Ziggy. Actually, you know, although Ziggy just got on the call, so we'll give him a moment to get settled. Leora, will you read for us?
Here, can you enlarge just a bit, please?
Yes, I would be happy to enlarge just a bit. And I'm doing it the old-fashioned way, Barry.
Okay.
It works.
That's the only way I know how.
It ain't broken.
ואת כל העדה הקהילו, are you okay? ואת כל העדה הקהילו באחד לחודש השני, והתיילדו על משפחותם, לבית אבותם, במספר שמות מבין 20 שנה ומעלה לגולגולתם.
Okay, so in the English, on the first day of the second month, they convoked the whole community who were registered by the clans of their ancestral houses, the names of those aged 20 years and over being listed head by head. Don't look ahead, just tell us what's the pshat, what's the simple meaning of this verse? What's going on here? Yeah, Leora.
Well, the pshat is just they gather the people and they tell us the date, which is Iyar, the second of Iyar. Every family with their children and everyone in their family. But they counted only the people that are 20 years old.
Very good. And not only the people, but which people specifically?
Men.
Men, yes. So they counted. Very good. So the census that's taken is not actually a census of the entirety of the people of Israel. It's only taken by men ages 20 and older.
Which the translation doesn't make clear. If you don't know the Hebrew, it doesn't tell you in this English translation that it's the men, the males.
Correct. It doesn't,
That's-
although it does in other places in the Torah.
Right, but in this, in the Hebrew, it does specifies.
Correct.
I wonder why.
What we're going to be looking at specifically is what's emboldened. Vayit yaldu al mishpachotam levet avotam. The Hebrew word vayit yaldu. Does anybody recognize in that word anything interesting? And I'm going to, don't look at the commentary. What is vayit yaldu? Who can tell us what that Hebrew word means, like exactly, an exact translation?
And we're given
Born
birth.
to.
Say that again, Lily.
They were born to.
Okay, so we are going to count the people who were born to specific families. So here it's translated as who were registered by the clans of their ancestral homes. Registered maybe means there was a, like a birth, what do you call it when you have to fill out a birth certificate and then it's registered in the city of wherever it is that you're born. And so V'yid Yaldu maybe means like they filled out this birth certificate according to each tribe, so they knew who was born from each tribe. Does that make sense? George, are you talking to us or to somebody else? Because I see your lips moving, but you're muted. George?
Does this work?
Now you're unmuted. What were you saying before?
It's a hit palel. It's reflexive. Yell it, to the kid to grow. No, the gadols to grow, but it's yell, but it's a reflexive form of a verb.
Okay,
Very
thank you.
unusual in this case.
Thank you. Exactly. That is exactly the point that the commentators are going to make. It makes no sense for this verb to be reflexive, because when we think reflexive, like hitlabesh, what does hitlabesh mean?
Dress oneself.
Dress yourself.
Mitlabesh. Yes, I am dressing myself.
Yeah.
Right. Hilbish means what?
He dress.
Put on.
To cause somebody else to get dressed, to help somebody else when you're putting on their clothes, you say hilbish. But hitlabesh is you yourself, me. I am the one who's dressing myself. So you have a reflexive verb that would translate, if you were to translate this according to the reflexive nature of the verb, how, George, would you translate this? The yit yaldu al mishpachotam. How would you translate that?
Well, first of all, yaldu. It's plural and male, I believe. Yaldu.
It doesn't matter. It's plural.
Yeah.
Once it's plural in the Hebrew, male, female, it's
Yeah,
irrelevant.
it's everybody, so it'd be the male. But and also it's another winner is it's reversing vav, so it's in the future, but the vav.
Well, no, that's a vav hayipuch. That's the Hebrew in the Bible that says that the future tense actually is the past tense. So that you don't have to worry about so much. That's a common biblical.
I know, but it's in the past is what it's.
So yeah, so if you
Not the vav.
yeah,
In the future.
so just read the sentence. How would it be if you read it according to the
Hello?
reflective?
Okay.
1 minute. 1 minute.
No. Oh, I guess I still got the floor. And and all of the Ada is the witness, which is the Jews. Gathered, I guess, we're gathered in the first of the month of the second month, and I'm going to use what it says, is they registered.
No. But again, if we were to do it according to Het Pa'el, what would it be? Not and they registered.
They were.
They birthed them. Here, I'll do it. They
Yeah.
birthed themselves
Yeah.
according to their families, to their house of their ancestors.
Yeah.
They birth themselves. That's really the essence. So the question is, what do we do with that verb? It's such an unusual verb. What might it be hinting to us in terms of the way in which we could interpret or understand it? So George, since you're unmuted, would you read the commentary that begins with when scripture reports?
When scripture reports God saying, let us make man, it means that the blessed Holy One joins with each person to make them a whole person.
Okay, stop there. So the first thing that this is commenting on, this comment so far, is the plural, the idea that when somebody's birthed, there's more than one person involved in that birthing. Normally, when somebody's birthed, who's involved in the birthing?
The mother.
Yeah, mom is involved in the birthing and the child is birthed. That's it. So in this first comment that's made, when it says we're created, it's reminding us that we're not created alone. God is involved in our birthing, in our creation. Let us make man, right? Means that, we don't come into this world solely of our own free will and our own devices. Okay, George, keep going.
Okay. It is up to each of us to become whole in wisdom and in our moral qualities, so that we might truly merit being called a human being. This sentiment lies behind the teaching. The scion of noble ancestors, who is not also a scholar, let him be consumed by fire. Okay.
Well, okay, so let's pause here. So what is this?
Harsh.
Yeah, well, so what is the verse teaching us? How is the verse a proof text of the statement that comes before it, which is, it is up to each of us to become whole so that we might truly merit being called a human being. And then you have a proof text that says, right, the scion of a noble ancestor who is not a scholar, let him be consumed by fire. How is that a proof text of of that statement? What's it teaching us? It's a little complicated, isn't it?
Can you repeat what we're proof text, the phrase
Yes.
that we're going back to
Yes.
proof text again,
Yes.
please?
This sentence right there
Right, is the
is a
proof text of
proof
what?
text of this sentence. What it's basically saying is, just
right.
because you were born of nobility doesn't mean that you remain noble. Yeah, Sandy, I didn't see your.
That's okay. I didn't mean to interrupt you. The thought that it made, if you're not gonna, if you don't walk the talk, don't talk the talk.
Good. You have to do the work. Just because you're born into a position doesn't automatically give you the right to that position. It has to be earned. Life is not about how we're born into a certain position, but how we grow into that position due to our own merits, the things that we do to show nobility. And it's up to each one of us to become whole. When God says, let us make man in our image, the moment that we're born is not the end of the journey. It's the beginning of the journey. And life needs to be seen as a journey of growth. So continue, George.
Oh, thus, if our desire is to rely on our lineage, on our noble ancestors, then we must also strive to be like them, at the very least to follow in their ways and venerable practices.
Okay, who are the noble ancestors, or the lineage that we're talking about? Do you happen to personally have kings and queens in your lineage?
We have Moses.
Does anybody know Brenda Horowitz? She's in the waiting room. I'm now always fearful of letting people in who I don't know.
Isn't that the lady from Florida?
Oh, maybe.
Oh, good call. Oh my God, how did you just do that?
If you let someone in, can you also kick them out?
Yes,
So
yes. Hi, Brenda. Welcome back.
Hi, good afternoon.
It's nice to have you with us.
It's nice to be had.
Um,
So
so,
to-
so just to catch Brenda up for a second, let me just go back up so she can see the text. We're dealing with a verse that says, on the first day of the second month, the children of Israel came together and registered by clans. And we're looking at this Hebrew word vayit yaldu, which is to be birthed. And we learn that God creates us, but that we have the job to ensure that we make ourselves into the kind of people that we need to be made into. And we cannot rely on our lineage and our noble ancestors. So who is our lineage? Who are our noble ancestors? Ziggy.
So in Judaism, nobility is the educated. The more educated you are, the better you're perceived in the eyes of your peers, and the more you are respected. So to me, that's educating.
Good. Okay.
Like rabbis, like you.
Well, I don't know about me, but yes, in general, nobility comes from recognizing that it's about learning. And who can learn? Is it reserved for just a small priestly class of people? Is it reserved just for the rabbis of the community? Of course not.
Everyone.
no.
It's everybody. So when we refer generally to the noble ancestors, who are we referring to?
Patriarchs, I assume.
Yeah, we're probably referring to the patriarchs and the matriarchs. There's something in Judaism called zchut avot. When we begin the Amidah, the way that we begin the Amidah, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzhak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, what we're saying in that moment is we're going to say, hey, God, I may not be worthy of whatever it is that I'm about to ask you in the Amidah, but just do me a favor, God. Don't forget where I came from. Right? I come from Abraham and Sarah. So even if I'm not so worthy, remember, I'm their descendant. It's not their fault. You promised them. Can you, listen to me? But in this text, it's saying the opposite. It's saying we cannot rely on the worth of the merit of our ancestors. We have to do the work ourselves. If we want to be noble, if we want to be worthy, then we are the ones who have our work cut out for us.
So I kind of like it. It seems like it's saying that we should do both. There should be the ancestry that you have that gives you your start in life. And then what you choose to do with it is up to you. And as a parent of an adopted child, I especially like the ramifications of that as well.
Yeah, very nice. That's lovely. All of this somehow is going to relate back to this verb, vayit yaldu. Do we know yet? Can we figure out how it relates back to it? Remember, George pointed out that it's a reflexive verb. So what is the intention? How is this whole comment that we're reading right now related to this verb, giving birth to ourselves? Sandy.
So we're given an opportunity. We're born into a station, if you will. But we have to make ourselves into that's, into that clan, as it were, by virtue of behavior, by educating ourselves, whatever it is. So we do give birth to some of our being, not the way we literally look at birth, born from the mother, but birthing ourselves into behavior, activity, standards, morals.
Excellent.
So
Beautiful.
if we're going to identify with this group, be it our family, our community, our religion, that we are obligated to keep rebirthing, if it will, as you will.
Terrific. That's exactly what I think the text intends, that birth to be born is not a moment in our life, but it is a continual process in our life. And I don't know how often we think about it in that way. We are born anew every moment that we are continuing to grow and continuing to remind ourselves of the obligations that we have being born into this faith community, the Jewish people. That is not a privilege, but it's a right that comes with a whole host of obligations and responsibilities. And those obligations and responsibilities are not the responsibility of somebody else, our parents or the rabbi or a community. They're my responsibility. The parent, the rabbi, and the community can help us, can guide us, but we ultimately have to be the ones who are doing the hard work, the heavy lifting.
Right, she said something
Christians
interesting.
actually
She
use
said, like, when you choose to identify yourself with that community, right? So, that's where we have to take the active role in developing ourselves and saying that which we inherited, that foundation that our ancestors gave us, we're actively choosing to identify with that and to say, this is what I want to add to it. And again, as an adoptive parent who adopted our baby, he came from the hospital straight out into our arms. For his bar mitzvah, that was the last part of his conversion ceremony. For him to say, I'm taking this thing that you made a decision for me when I was a baby, and I'm making it my decision, and I'm actively choosing to be part of this tribe.
Christians use the term born again. I guess it's not, we refer to being Baal Tshuva, but it's, I guess that's also, it's not a unique concept to be born again,
Yeah, in fact, thank you. I never thought about it, but that's exactly what this is saying, that we shouldn't exclusively give over that expression of being born again to Christians. And, to something that Brenda said, when we celebrate Shavuot next week, the experience of revelation, what is that called? What's the Hebrew term for the experience of revelation when God, reveals God's self and gives the Torah? It's called Matan Torah.
Oh,
What is Matan Torah?
gift of the Torah.
Giving.
What's the tense? What's the Hebrew tense of it, the Matan Torah?
Past tense.
Present.
Yeah.
Present tense. So
Right.
Wouldn't it be
Torah,
no chain Torah?
yeah, but in the bracha, Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah, right? That's where we see it more clearly, that God didn't just give us Torah, but God is constantly giving us Torah, which means we have the opportunity constantly to place ourselves within community, knowing that community is what's going to help us birth the kind of people that we want to be. All right, let's go a little bit further. So let's finish this. George, you want to continue? We say, thus, if our desire, we have to strive to be like them and their venerable practices, and you're beginning right here. And so
here, when Israel were numbered, they planned their ancestral houses. Each one strove to be worthy of being related to their ancestor. Thus, Scripture states, registered by their ancestral houses. The verb is in the reflexive form, as if they personally bore themselves anew to their parents, so they might be worthy of being called by their names.
okay, stop here. So now this is a fascinating read. What is he saying here? Why is it in the reflexive? It's not so much what we've said, which everything that we've said so far is accurate. What we've said so far is it's in the reflexive because we are constantly or potentially birthing ourselves, creating something new of who we are, growing into the person that we ultimately want to be. Now he's added something else, a slightly different twist. And what's this twist that he's added here? Why is it a reflexive birthing?
right, keep going.
No, first I want to
They
answer the
might be
question.
worthy
Worthy to who?
to the community.
More specifically than that,
Their
Their
family.
parents.
Of their ancestors.
to our parents. What does that mean? Right? That we need to be worthy of being called by their names.
Well, we are called by their names. Your name, son of your father's name, right?
Okay, so literally that's the way that we're referred to, but this isn't speaking about it in a literal sense. What is it implying?
We have to earn the name by how we behave and how we conduct ourselves.
Exactly. Right?
Oh, that's why I
Name
think it
it's-
is literal. It's a small community. If you go out and do something that's not good, everybody's going to know that your dad's son did something not good.
Which goes back to the fact that when we talk about having a character of a good name.
Mhm.
Everything we do reflects on who we are and how we're perceived and how our families perceived.
See, the problem I have with this text is when it says the clans of their ancestral houses, and I'm gonna assume that that's the tribes of Israel. And some of those guys weren't so good.
Well, we know that we don't read Torah literally the way that only in terms of the pshat, and certainly our Hasidic roots are not interested in necessarily reading Torah from a pshat standpoint. There's King David, for example. We looked at this, last week or whenever. I don't even remember. Every class that I teach kind of blends into another class. But at some point I was teaching a class where we were looking at King David as a model. And we know from King David that there are any number of moments in his life where he let down himself and God and the Jewish people in his actions. And yet he's still the model for who we strive to be. So imperfection is part of our tradition. And that's why it is a reflexive verb where even when we've made a mistake, we don't give up in that moment, but we continue to recognize that we can be born anew, born again, in tomorrow in a manner that hopefully reflects the values of our parents and the tribes and the Jewish people. Yeah, Lauren and then Leora.
What happens if the values of the parents?
Right, Lauren, we can't hear you very well.
Okay, what happens if the value of the parents are not the values that you necessarily strive for? Like what happens if your parent was Bernie Madoff, I mean, obviously you're not going to strive to be like Bernie. I mean, I think both his sons are dead, but didn't the daughter-in-law end up changing her name? So how does that fit into this whole? I mean, I was at a funeral once where the son got up and berated the father at the funeral. I mean, not that that was the place to do it, but how does that fit into all this stuff?
It's a great question. What do you think the answer to that is?
I don't know. That's why I'm asking you.
How would you answer Lauren's question?
I couldn't hear. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
Right. What happens if the family you were born into is a family that's filled with shame, that they've done gross and dastardly things? So,
You want a good example of not to do.
Say it again, Ziggy.
Gives you a good example of what not to do.
Skip
Lily.
You would want to distance yourself from their actions.
And reach further back in the family tree.
Right.
Yeah, there's a statement that in Leviticus where it says, "Ish imo va'aviv tira'u ve'et shabtotai tishmeru." It's the verse. Well, sorry, the phone is ringing in the synagogue and it's going to my cell phone. Too many phones ringing all at the same time. The verse is, "You shall fear your parents," right? Because I am the Lord your God. It's the second statement after "Kaveret avicha v'et imecha," you shall honor your parents. But then the verse says, "Ve'et shabtotai tishmeru," and my Sabbaths you shall keep. And Rashi, the biblical commentator, asked the question, why is the verse about honoring parents or fearing our parents and the verse about keeping Shabbat in the same verse? Why aren't those two separate verses? And Rashi says it's because both are essential, but if your parents tell you to break Shabbat, you don't listen to your parents. God takes precedence. And so what I would say, Lauren, is that in the instance where your parents don't do what they were supposed to be doing in terms of raising you, then you look at it the way Lily said, that you go back a generation, that you recognize that parenthood is not just your immediate parents, but your ancestors, your great-grandparents, all the way back to Moshe at Sinai and the children of Israel who received the Torah. Leora, you're muted.
I'm taking back actually to the beginning where it says that they're counting 20-year-old people. I don't know, men and women, but they're counting 20-year-olds. And you tend to think that kids at 13 are considered adults, but yet here they're waiting for them to count them at the age of 20. I think what we learn from it is that until you reach the age of 20, and usually by then, I assume they were married and they had their own children, then they're becoming mensches, that they're becoming people that can sort and see what's good and what's bad, you know, from their ancestors and taking it forward.
Yeah, in reality, the idea of celebrating bar and bar mitzvah at the age of 13 with kids today where they are completely helpless to be able to manage on their own in most instances, there's something very true to 20. Of course, I have a 20 and a 22-year-old, and sometimes I see them as rather helpless as well. But I don't blame them, I blame me. So,
Well, in this case also, wasn't it 20 because this is a census for military service?
correct. Correct. Okay. So let's jump to the second text.
Well, Rabbi, I got a comment on the next line.
On the one that I skipped.
They were descendants of Noah. Noah gave birth. Well, holit is a causative. It's not reflexive.
Uh-huh.
So, you know, I don't know about that.
In other words, holit is a causative.
Yeah.
So he caused, so as opposed to a reflexive.
Yes,
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm not sure.
In that verb.
I don't know, George.
May I ask you a question?
Yeah, Barry.
I really like this. Does this come from a book that Rabbi Slater did?
Yes, it's called Torah Gems. I can show it to you.
That's okay. That's okay. Let's move on. I just wanted to know what the name of the book was.
Miriam just invited everybody, since there's some background noise, that if you're not talking, if you can mute yourself, that would be excellent, since it does become difficult to sometimes hear with some of the background noise. Barry, there is it's a collection called Iturei HaTorah, and it is a 6-volume collection, which I have in my office, which I'm happy to lend to anybody. It's all in Hebrew, but there is a translation of 3 short volumes that's not a full collection of the Hebrew. It's like the best of, and that one is in English, and I happen to have that one at my house, and I'm happy to share that with anybody who wants to take a look at it as well. So when we're back to living a normal life, you are welcome to come and check out either of those in my bookshelves.
Thank you.
Okay. So the next text, Lily, would you read for us? You're muted, Lily.
איש על דגלו באותות לבית אבותם, יחנו בני ישראל, מנגד סביב לאוהל מועד יחנו.
Okay, so in this context, right, the Israelites shall camp each within his standard. That's his degel, his flag, under the banners, be'otot, right, the signs or the banners of their ancestral home. They shall camp around the tent of the meeting. So again, from a pshat standpoint, what's it teaching us?
Stand together with your family.
Yeah, right. It's a simple way to organize and order the children of Israel, the people of Israel, before they, go out and march, and when they come back, so that there's not chaos.
Mhm.
Everybody has this set place that they need to be. We have, Ziggy and Gil and others in our synagogue who are working very assiduously right now and judiciously, Paul, but he's not on the call right now, to figure out how we can come back to the synagogue in a way that will protect everybody and keep everybody safe. So this idea of the logistical side of how do you manage lots of people, that's the pshat of what's going on here. But for our Hasidic rabbis and for the commentators themselves, it's never enough just to read the pshat of it. There must be some hidden understanding being connected both to your degel and to your oat. And so the question is, what is going on here? So who would like to read? Mava, will you read for us? Just make sure you unmute. Thank you.
Every Jew must consider thinking, I am unique in the world. There has never been anyone else like me in the world. If there had been anyone like me, there would have been no need for me to exist. Indeed, each person is a new creation. Each person must rectify the quality and Torah teaching connected to their soul, which only they can accomplish. Ultimately, through this process, all of the world will be repaired through the totality of the Jewish people.
Okay, what a lovely statement and idea, right? The essence of it is what? And more importantly, what's the connection of the comment back to the verse that we read?
We each have a reason to exist. Each one of us is important, because if there had been two, just identical to us, then there would be no need for us to exist. So each person has a reason to exist.
Good, excellent. What's the Hebrew word that he's playing with to come up with this translation in this verse? Ish al diglo ba'otot lebeit avotam. I'll give you a hint.
Diglo.
Yes.
No.
So his degel.
Yeah.
What is a degel? Degel's a flag.
So, yeah.
But it's interesting, right? What's the connotation of a flag? Think about, where do we experience flags and what do they represent? What's the symbolism behind a flag?
Countries.
Unity.
Okay,
Like
good.
a team.
So
Unity.
countries, right? Absolutely. When you see the American flag, what do you feel when you're standing, singing the national anthem at a baseball game? Do you remember baseball games? Those were those things that people gathered together in big fields, and they would hit a ball with a bat, and there would be lots and lots of fans that would come and watch. Some of you may remember it.
Yeah,
Hopefully we'll be able to remember it again very soon.
Thanks for depressing me.
Well, I know we don't realize until we don't have it that, baseball is such a inherent part of this time of year. And as we move into summer, and it's so essential to the character of what it means to be an American. But But that moment where we stand up and see the flag, and there's this feeling of pride that comes with it. It's our flag. Or how many of you have ever traveled around the world and you see all the flags of the different countries and you see the Israeli flag? And what do you typically say? Oh, it's the Israeli flag, right? And you have this sense of, oh my God, they're waving my other country, right? There's a sense of pride.
I also take pictures of all the flags.
So flags are very much statements about who we are, how we identify, how we understand ourselves, not just singularly, but as connected to other people. And the comment that Lauren said earlier, I think is a really important one. When Bernie Madoff did what he did, what's the first thing that we say?
I wish
Right, when we hear about it as Jews?
it wasn't Jewish.
Not good for the Jews.
Exactly. What a chilul Hashem, right? Not good for the Jews. Did he really have to be Jewish?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think Christians say that, by the way, when somebody does something wrong?
No.
Like he was a Catholic, he was a Protestant.
No, but the born again
I've wondered
Christians
that
do.
about other ethnic groups, actually, that, gangs and ethnic gangs. And I wonder if their general public population, I've wondered this for decades. Do they also say, oh God, I hope they don't think that because I'm of that ethnic group, that, that country of origin, maybe that's identifiable easily to people, that I and all of my people, my general community behave that way. This has been a Jewish thing back to Meyer Boski, things like way back where people
It goes
said,
back
oh
even
God.
further. It goes back to the prophets.
Well, no,
right?
but I mean, realistic history within my lifetime, and I have to go back, that people were saying it. You could sit in a deli and anytime that you heard about somebody doing something, somebody at the next table would say, oh God, this guy who did this thing, this crime, this behavior, this whatever, was Jewish, and everybody in a deli would cringe.
It's funny you say that, because we had a landlord 2 buildings ago and we had a meeting with them, and Renee said to him, I really wish you would convert because you make Jews look really bad.
Wow.
Yeah. We didn't hold, that was really a tough one, but she was right.
So here we have a statement that reminds us that, we're each unique individual people. We have our singular flag, the midot, the qualities of our character that wave, that let people know who we are. And we have the otot, the banners, the reminders that we are also connected to a people, and that our individual actions reflect on the way in which people see the totality of who we are. Just as, you say to your kids when they're growing up, your actions reflect back on the house that you came from. When you behave in public in a certain way, don't think that it's not going to come back and reflect not just on you, but on all of us. And you need to go out there and behave in a manner that shows the best in you, and take those qualities and character traits that are uniquely yours and bring them into the world to make a difference. Because it's only ultimately through each person living up to his or her degel that we can be the kind of complete Jewish people that we need to be. God gave Torah at Sinai, not just to the children of Israel that were there in the moment, but to all of us. We were all there, which means each one of us has that responsibility. So just out of curiosity, how do you discover that uniqueness that's yours? How do you learn what your degel is? How have you gone about figuring out in your lives to this point, what is your degel?
Really interesting when you have an identical twin brother.
So how have you done it, Barry?
Well, we went to different colleges and then we started to develop differently from that point forward. And although we were in the same industry for 15 years before he left that industry, we paved our own way. But once we went to college, then we had different experiences in different situations, and we were able to do that.
Others, how have you discovered the unique gift that is yours to bring into this world?
Well, everybody has different talents and different abilities. I know that I was not brought into this world to sing in a choir. We know that. Everyone at the synagogue knows that. But there are certain qualities that I do possess. And if I'm able to keep building on those, then that's what I can use to accomplish better in the world.
Great. So
I identify that. I'm still trying.
No, of course. It's that's why you're birthing yourself all the time.
Right.
You're born again every day. So understanding what are our strengths and what are our weaknesses, knowing the gifts and the liabilities, the limitations is essential. There are people that think they can do everything and that are good at everything. And then there are people who think they are good at nothing and can't do anything. And a lifetime of living, as Miriam says, is understanding what are the gifts and letting go of those things that I can't do, and being okay with letting go of those things that I can't do and saying somebody else will pick up that slack. That's what it means to be part of a community. That's what it means to be part of the totality of the Jewish people. When I belong to the synagogue, this is what I can contribute to Shomrei Torah Synagogue. Don't ask me to contribute that, because you're not going to get very far with me if that's what you're asking me to do. But if I don't contribute this, then the community cannot survive as strongly as it needs to, because I'm not contributing my unique gift to this community, to this family, to our Los Angeles community, to the world. Right? And every day we get to wake up in the morning and through the tefillot, especially in Birchot HaShachar, Otir Yisrael B'Tifara, right? You know, Asali Kol Tzorki, or, any of those that remind us that we are given the gift of life and the gift of being a Jew and given the gift of being free and wearing the glory of God, that we have a degel, that we have a flag, a unique purpose that we have to be, doing in this world. And if we're not doing it, then we're failing ourselves, the community, our family, and God. It's a big, heavy responsibility, isn't it? All right, I think we have time for one more. So the question is, which one do I want to do? Let's do the third one. Let's do this one. Rabbi Elimelech of Lizansk, who was the disciple of Dov Ber, the Maggid of Mizerach. So, V'yadaber Adonai al Moshe. Ziggy, will you read for us? Sorry.
וידבר אדוני אל משה במדבר סיני באוהל מועד באחד לחודש השני בשנה השנית לצאתם מארץ מצרים לאמור.
Okay, so on the first day of the second month and second year following the Exodus from the land of Egypt, God spoke to Moses in the wilderness of Sinai in the tent of the meeting, saying. So, just for sake of time, I'm going to tell you that the comment is based upon a word in this verse here in the bold that doesn't need to be there. Taking a look at it, what word is unnecessary?
B'midbar Sinai.
Yeah, you could have said the same thing, Vaydaber Adonai Moshe ba'ohel moed. Why do we need to have Midbar Sinai? We already know that.
Or
We've been
certainly
there
you
for
could
a
have said
while.
either Bamidbar or Sinai, because you know which desert.
That's right.
So-
And if you're going to put in one of them, you certainly don't need both of them. So they're redundant, and they're in their redundancy. They're obviously here to teach us something profound. And so, Sandy, would you read for us?
I would be happy to. In the wilderness of Sinai, this is to tell us that we should see ourselves subjugated to God and lowly, like Sinai.
Why is that the case? Oh, well, actually, you know what? I'm not going to keep going. We'll just do it this way.
This is how God approached things. He rejected all the high mountains and chose Sinai, the lowest of them all. But we have to be careful not to let our sense of lowliness bring us down so far that we become sad or depressed, which otherwise inhibits the presence of the Shekhinah. Therefore, the Torah warns us to always be filled with joy, for the Shekhinah is only present through that joy similar to that on a holiday and festival. That is the significance here of the location in the tent of meeting. God is present when we bring ourselves into the tent of the festival.
Okay, so there's two things that are going on here in this paragraph. There's the first half of the paragraph, which speaks about why Sinai of all the mountains was chosen, given that it's the smallest of the mountains in the desert. And if God was going to come and speak, you would have imagined that God would have spoken from the tallest mountain, not the smallest mountain. And that relates to us. And then the second piece is the ways in which we should approach the specific holiday. So let's take a look at the first piece of this text first. What is the intention to remind us personally that God spoke from Sinai as opposed to any other mountain? What's the message, the moral message, the ethical message for ourselves? Who is God looking for?
Us.
What kind of us's? Who does God seek out to be, right, those who carry forth the tradition? What is the quality of our being that God wants in us?
To be close to him. Close.
For sure, but according to this passage, what's the midah? I'll give you another hint. What's the midah that the Torah says Moshe had the most of?
Anava.
Yeah.
Anava. What is anava?
Modesty.
Humility or modesty. Why did God choose Sinai of all mountains?
Not to be humiliated, not to think of
No, the opposite, because it was a humble mountain. Because Sinai wasn't arrogant, and God turns to those who express in their lives a certain amount of humility.
Right, and this was also a people that were just slaves. So also humble.
Indeed, although, and that's the point of the second piece of this, where it says, but we need to be careful not to let our sense of lowliness bring us down so far that we become sad or depressed, which otherwise inhibits the presence of the Shekhinah. This is a hard question to ask, but if you were to think about what made God angriest with the children of Israel in the wilderness, what might you say?
Golden calf.
What?
Golden calf.
Not a specific event, George, but a behavioral practice. What made God angry? What frustrated God when God was dealing with the children of Israel as a people?
The lack of faith.
And a lack of faith. A lack of faith in who, Sandy?
God. Well, Moses and by extension, God. All or themselves.
Yes. To me, that's my answer to my question. What made God most upset with the Israelites? What made God most disappointed was their constant lack of faith in themselves. The whole way God set it up from the moment they left Egypt, giving them arms to have to fight their own battles, was a way of God was trying to say, hey, I know you've been slaves, but you can do this. You're my people. And every turn the children of Israel let God down because they let themselves down, because they didn't have faith in themselves. So it's one thing to be humble. Moshe was humble, but Moshe also stood up to Pharaoh. Moshe stood up to God. Moshe fully was aware of his strengths. Humility isn't about only a sense of lowliness. It's the opposite. Humility is about recognizing, like Miriam said earlier, where are my strengths and where are my weaknesses? And how can I apply my strengths to this world to better myself and the people in it? That's the tension that we're looking for in this text. The wilderness is where God brings Torah, right, to Mount Sinai, the lowliest. But at the same time, right, that Mount Sinai raises itself up because it recognizes that God came to it, to Mount Sinai. God comes to each one of us. We need to raise ourselves up because of that, because we are created B'Tselem Elohim, in the image of God. But that should lead us to arrogance. Oh, we're the chosen people. We're better than everybody else. Right? That's not what's going on here. It's not about arrogance. It's about humility coupled with the recognition of what it is that we can do because God chose us, that gives us the power to use our degel, our flag, and go out and make a difference. We're running out of time. So the last comment is simply about how we need to, like the question I asked, how we need to incline our heart towards the holidays. When we come to the temple, in this case, we can't come to the temple, but when we come to our Zoom conference and our Zoom prayer experiences this Shavuot, how do we come to them in a manner that allows us to see that we're meeting God? Be Ohel Moed is the tent of the meeting. It's purposely using the word meeting to say that when we approach the experience of prayer or a holiday celebration, let us imagine that we are approaching God in that moment. So when you join services this week and next week for Shavuot, I want you to think about how do you join services so that you are going to be standing in the presence of God. Not just sitting in your sweats on your couch, right? But doing it in a way that brings the fullness of joy to that experience as if you were standing before the Holy One, blessed be. All right. Well, that is the amount of time that we have for today. I'm sorry. The classes are always too short.
How true.
Thank you for tuning in as always, and I look forward to spending Shabbos with you by Zoom and seeing you all next week in our continuing learning. We don't have class on Monday, my spiritual class, because of Memorial Day, and we don't have class on Tuesday, Jackie and I, because we have the graduation for our 7th graders. So I won't see you again in class until next week, Thursday, for Lunch and Learn.
Thank you. Shabbat Shalom.
So it's going to be a shorter week of learning. I'm